Emily Ahlin, is that
Yeah, that's
Emily
correct.
Ahlin is the Director of Archives for the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland. She received her Master of Library and Information Science degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Don't hold it against her. And has worked previously in public and academic libraries and government organizations. Emily regularly collaborates with diocesan archivists from across the country in their professional group, the Association of Catholic Diocesan Archivists, and is one of the assistant editors of the Ohio Archivist. So she's passionate about making archives known, and so are we, and usable by people who can benefit, like us, from access to such collections. So I'm going to turn over to Emily, and hopefully everything works here. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Tom.
Just use the mouse.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here, both in person and on Zoom. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. Like Tom said, I'm extra passionate about making sure that archival collections get used, because what's the point, right? Why save it if we're not going to use it? So I like to call this presentation the inestimable value of church records, because I think a lot of people really underestimate the multiple uses of diocesan archives. And so I'll talk about that a little bit as we go through, oops, here we go. Go through this presentation. So we're going to break it down into three particular parts. First is, are church records useful for me, and how would I know? And what kinds of church records are there? Yes.
I don't know.
Is it maybe that we haven't looked at the chat?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Do some housekeeping here. Okay, we can do.
Yeah, I think it
Okay.
might have just been the unread messages.
Okay. No, maybe not.
Is it beeping to let us know that it's recording?
I don't know. Well, yeah. Well, we'll deal with it. Deal with the beeping. Whether
I'm fine.
Sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, we'll break it down. Are church records useful for me? And then kind of like the policies and procedures. So kind of where I, as the diocesan archivist and the diocesan archives, fit into the church hierarchy, and how that dictates what I have and what I don't have. And based on what I have, some things that might be particularly useful for you. And then more like specific details about how to use the diocesan archives here in the Diocese of Cleveland. So first things first, are church records useful for me? I kind of made like this little flow chart of questions you can ask yourself. So the first question is, were the ancestors I am searching for information on practicing Roman Catholics? If the answer is no, I have nothing for you, and I apologize. But you'd be surprised how many people reach out to me and their ancestors weren't Catholic. So that's kind of like your baseline question. Were they Catholic? And if that answer is yes, then your next question is, did my ancestors receive their sacraments in the place I'm looking? A common misconception is that the church kind of keeps tabs on everybody that goes to church. The reality is that we don't, and if we do, we don't keep that stuff long-term. So great example. I had a woman reach out to us. Her grandmother, I don't believe it was Italy, it was somewhere in Europe, was born somewhere in Europe, received, baptism, first communion, confirmation in Europe, came to the United States, got married in Pittsburgh, and then moved to Cleveland. So her grandmother never completed a sacrament in the Diocese of Cleveland. And she's contacting us looking for information, and we had nothing for her. And she's like, well, can't you just look up my grandmother's file? And I was like, we don't keep files. We don't keep files. The only thing the church keeps long-term is the sacramental records. So we keep sacramental records. They have to outlive everybody in this room and whoever is doing my job after me. We keep those in perpetuity. So like going back to the example of this woman whose grandmother lived in Cleveland for 50 years, was super involved in her parish. You know, we might have like a stray piece of information somewhere. You know, if like an ancestry book was made, or like, you know, the 75th anniversary, you know, they do the nice picture directories. You know, that might be where we have something, but we have no detailed information. So if your ancestor didn't receive a sacrament, we probably don't have anything useful for you, but we can always check. So if you can answer yes to that question, then the next question is, do I have some basic information about my ancestors? And I'm talking their name, maybe a general area where they lived, a time period. You don't have to have exact dates, but if you can, you know, the more information you can give us at the archives, the more likely we are to get a match. Our example is always, you know, the Irish. You know, we'll get people who call us and they're like, my grandmother's name was Marie O'Reilly, but that's all I know about her. And I'm like, okay, there's about 100 Marie O'Reillys in all of my sacramental records. Like, you gotta give me something else. Otherwise, you know, it's the more information you can give me, the more helpful I can be for you. So if you have a lot of good basic information, if we have something, we will find it. If you don't have a lot of good information, we might find something, but your chances are significantly decreased. So I like to talk about our mission statement. So our job is first and foremost as the Diocesan Archives to serve the Bishop of Cleveland. He's technically the owner of the collection, and we are really functionally an institutional archive. My job is mostly to kind of keep tabs on the bishop's ministry and what he does. And in that vein, I also serve diocesan offices, parishes and other entities with questions that they have. And then last but not least, I actually had a bishop one time say that they always talk about the laity last because the laity is the most important. And I agree with that. And the laity, so that's everybody else. By collecting, arranging, describing, preserving, providing access to historic documents, records, and objects in physical and electronic media. So we're still working on the electronic part, but we're really good at the physical part. And this is another important part, created by and pertaining to the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland in the present and historic area of the diocese. So you might not be aware of this. At one point, the Diocese of Cleveland was the entirety of northern Ohio, from the Pennsylvania border to the Indiana border. In 1910, it split in half into the Diocese of Cleveland and the Diocese of Toledo, and then Cleveland was split again with the formation of the Diocese of Youngstown in 1943. So depending on where you're looking for, we might have to direct you elsewhere. A lot of those records we didn't hold on to. We sent them we sent Toledo to Toledo when Toledo was formed, and we sent Youngstown to Youngstown when Youngstown was formed. So it just depends on what area of the Diocese of Cleveland you're looking in. So to talk for a minute about some of our collections, the biggest and most robust collection we have is all paper. In particular, we have really good records on each of our bishops. But again, like I said, these are all kind of like general overview records about diocesan transactions and a lot of, you know, bishop, I would like to spend money on building this building. Yes, you may do so. What I have highlighted here, though, is just a personal favorite of mine. Bishop McFadden, who was the first bishop of Youngstown, but before he was bishop of Youngstown, he was auxiliary bishop here in Cleveland, bought a Buick and got this letter, the General Tire Company. It's basically junk mail. The guy is reaching out to him and saying, hey, Bishop, I heard you just bought a new Buick. Would you like some new tires for your new Buick? You know, the equivalent of, I'm calling about your car's extended warranty. I'm writing about your car's extended warranty. And what cracked me up the most is not only did they save this very obvious junk mail, but then they saved Bishop McFadden's reply, which was very simply, no, I don't want new tires. Thanks for reaching out. So we also have, as part of our historical collection, you'll see that big document dead center. That is the papal bull that established the Diocese of Cleveland. So it's part of my job to make sure that that lasts forever. We also have a number of chalices. The one pictured here is from the Eucharistic Congress in 1935. And then we absorb some material from closed parishes. It just depends on whether it is at Henninger's or here. That is, I believe that came from a parish in Lorraine, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. But we absorbed that when they closed.
I didn't get that.
It's okay, Siri, you didn't have to. And then this is it took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out why we had the stockings of Pope Pius IX, and then it dawned on me he was the Pope that established the Diocese of Cleveland. But we have his socks. They are used, they are gross, they have a hole in them, and somebody went through the trouble to seal them. And those are just the highlights of some of the more historical items we have. We have a rather impressive collection of relics, as well as other, kind of like liturgical items and other items of importance, vestments, things like that. And of course,
Could you invent that person?
oh yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, why all of you are here, the sacramental records. So we have sacramental records from closed parishes mostly. If a parish, so canon law, which we'll talk about in a little bit, canon law dictates that sacramental records are to remain in the parish. So we only get them in the diocesan archives if a parish closes or if they're just too fragile for the parish that they belong to care for on their own. So we have not as big of a collection, like the Diocese of Pittsburgh probably has the largest collection of sacramental records of any diocese across the country. We don't have a horribly large collection, but busy enough that my coworker, that's her full-time job, is dealing with the sacramental records. So if you've ever called the diocesan archives to ask for help, you've probably talked to Kathy and not to me, which is good because Kathy is more useful for you than I am. But for presentations, you get stuck with me. So we have the sacramental records. And then we also have quite a bit of, we have some diocesan publications. So you might, if you've been around a while in Cleveland, unlike me, we have copies of People of Faith, which was our celebration book for the diocesan sesquicentennial in 1997. It contains a kind of like a basic summary overview of every parish in the Diocese of Cleveland, including all the Italian parishes. I have that available online if you don't have a print copy of it, and I'll explain how you can find that later on in the presentation. And then, of course, Bishop Pilla, we have his 25th, and I have so many copies of his 25th anniversary book. We're not really in the business of giving things away, but I have so many copies of that if you want a copy of that, let me know, I'll send you. Let's see. There we go. And then pictures. So we have pictures going all the way back. You'll notice on the right-hand side, that's a pretty old looking picture and a guy dressed like Davy Crockett. That's Father Linda Smith. He was a military chaplain from our diocese in the late 1800s. So we have pictures of him. We have pictures from the Eucharistic Congress in 1935. That's what you see on the lower left there, the living monstrance. We have the Benedictine brothers, and then I cannot remember what sisters those are. This is another kind of common misconception about the diocesan archives. We don't have a lot of records of men and women religious. So if you have members of your family that belong to different religious orders in the greater Cleveland area, you have to contact that religious order or their successor organization for their records. We might have, Bishop, can we spend $25,000 to build a new convent? We have those kind of letters, but we don't have like the personal records. And we have some stray pictures here and there, but nothing substantial enough that it's easy to search through or kind of find that information. We've got some more information about our diocese. So you'll see we have the original cathedral there. And it's the original cathedral because the steeple's in the middle. The kind of current iteration of the cathedral post 1940, the steeples off the right. And then of course, lots of information on Bishop Hilla. I'm told that's Bernie Kosar. I didn't know who Bernie Kosar was before I moved here. And I just lost a few of the friends that I made by saying that. So kind of where the diocesan archives fits into the hierarchy of the church. So you figure the Pope is in charge of the Universal Church, and the Vatican archives keeps track of a lot of information, but the Vatican archives kind of documents what the Pope does. So the Pope, next down the hierarchy, your cardinal or your archbishop or bishop, who is in charge of your archdiocese or your diocese. And that's where the diocesan archives fall in. And they're governed by church canon law, canon 486 specifically, if you want to look it up. And that basically gives us our mandate, and it's to kind of keep track of the bishop and his ministry. So then the parish archives it's the pastor. The pastor is in charge. There's, each territory in the diocese is sectioned off, and then a priest is put in charge of that territory. He answers to the bishop, who answers to the Pope. And so that little section of the diocese is called a parish, and they have their parish archives, which are governed by Canon 535 in the Code of Canon Law. And so all of these are kind of like, they're together, but separate institutions, right? So, when we think about like Holy Rosary Parish, for instance, they're still open. They're in charge of their own archives. I really have very little oversight over them. I can't tell them what to do, pretty much. I can offer a lot of suggestions as to what I think they should do, but ultimately it's up to them, because canon law is very clear of where kind of like the delineation of authority goes. So when it comes to the diocesan archives, keeping in mind that parishes are responsible for their own archives and the diocese is responsible for its archives, I could talk about things I have and things I don't have. So what I do have, when I've absorbed parishes records, is I have sacramental registers, baptism, first communion, confirmation, marriage, death registers. If there were people in the parish making sacraments, I have records of those. That's really important. Canon law says that those have to exist forever. So now that the parish doesn't exist anymore, doesn't mean we get rid of the sacramental records. It just means that they have to be moved somewhere else. So it kind of goes up the chain. We have record of parish activities. This is hit or miss for all of the parishes that we have. So commemorative books, I was talking about those photo directories, worship aids, if they saved them from big masses, pictures and bulletins, are some of the things that I might have from a parish. Again, it's different parish to parish, depending on how good they were at keeping stuff. I have the Catholic Universe Bulletin, the defunct newspaper. I love newspapers. It is quite possibly my favorite collection. We have the full run of it. I am working very, very hard to try and get it online. It is a slow process going through all the red tape. So I'm probably a few years out from having it available online, but once I get it online, it will be keyword searchable, and incredibly useful. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully that'll be soon.
How far back is that?
1874.
Would that have obituaries?
Yes, they had obituaries, and it will be keyword searchable. So you could, in theory, you could go through and put, whoever's last name, your family name in there. And if anything is in there, it'll pop up. So hopefully that'll be happening soon. But like I said, the red tape is a little bit cumbersome sometimes. But we have a clippings file. So I've got we have it for a nationality. So I have like an Italian clippings file. I don't know how big it is. I haven't looked in it recently. But if that's something you're interested in, I can definitely open that up. And then as far as school records go, we have transcripts from closed high schools. And then we have elementary school records as well. But we really can't release a whole lot of that information because it's, you get into like the Federal Education Privacy Act and other And then there's like immunization records in there, so then that gets involved. So we try not to hand those out to too many people that aren't named in the record. Things we do not have addresses. And that's simply because that information isn't recorded in the sacramental register. And like I mentioned earlier, we don't have a whole filing cabinet of every parishioner that ever came into the Diocese of Cleveland ever. We just don't. Our collection is particularly lacking in historical maps. In all honesty, the public library is more useful to you if you're looking for historical maps. That's just another thing that we just don't have. We also are really lacking in cemetery records. If your ancestors were buried in a cemetery managed by Catholic cemeteries, you would have to contact them. They have better records. A lot of those, you know, because we do have a large cemetery organization managing our cemeteries, there's been no need to send those records to the archives, so we just don't have them. As I mentioned before, we don't have files on persons who did not complete sacraments. We do not have detailed orphanage records. The vast, I would want to say all, but I'm going to say the vast majority of orphanages that were open and operational in the Diocese of Cleveland. Actually, it's probably not all, because I think, no, Parmadale was run by charities. The point is, a lot of them were run by religious orders. So the records for all of those, again, have gone to the religious order. You can kind of think of them functionally like a parish, right? They're kind of in charge of their own thing. So in some instances, like for example, Parmadale, we have kind of like check-in card, like they made index cards for everybody when they checked in. So we have that information, but it's minimal at best. And it's like, you know, what you could fit on a little index card. We don't have a lot of really detailed orphanage records. And then, as I mentioned before, we don't have substantial material on men and women religious. So our website is marginally useful. I'm working on making it more useful. I think it's more useful than it was when I got here. So it's just one of those things. It's a slow and steady progress. I have arrows pointing at all of the tabs that are interesting to you. So we have the Sacramental Records tab, we have the Researchers tab, and then the Digital Collection tab. That's my URL right there, dioceseofcleveland.org/archives. And then I'm going to go through each of the tabs. So on the Sacramental Records, the general, at the very top, when you first click on this link, you're going to get where are my sacramental records. That opens up, if you click on the little blue link there, and I apologize, it's difficult to see. That's going to open up a 3 or 4 page spreadsheet. So during reconfiguration, when everything closed and merged, the spreadsheet or the PDF file is going to have where everything went to. So if your parish closed during reconfiguration, you will know which merged parish your records went to, or which whether they made their way to the diocesan archives or not. If they made their way to the diocesan archives, if you're looking for your own personal sacramental record, we would want you to fill out the sacramental record request form, which you'll get to. You just have to scroll down on the page. If you're doing genealogy, you can fill out this form too. Either is acceptable. The other option is to do to fill out the form on our researchers page. So this is just, you know, first name. Yes.
Is it possible to get a photocopy of the original sacramental document?
So what we can do is sometimes what Kathy will do is she'll snip a clipping of the record. So the way that the register works is there's like, you know, 5 records per page. And so like your ancestor might be the first one, but then there's 4 underneath that are not related to your family. It's just, you know, the next couple people that were baptized that day. Sometimes we'll send that. We can also issue baptismal certificates as well.
Which are current handwritten documents that are, it verifies that the sacrament took
Yes.
place, but it's not a photocopy of the original.
Yeah, the key part when it comes to sacramental records is the register itself. Because even like when people get married, like, you know, you're issued a baptismal certificate when you get baptized, but when you go to get married, like you have to get a fresh one that's got like a current date on it. You can't just like, you know, I had, you know, my mom keeps mine in her fire safe, and I was, you know, my thought was, oh, if I ever get married, like I'll just go to the fire safe and get it. Like, no, I have to contact the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and they have to issue a whole new certificate. That's just the way it goes. Because the baptismal record is kind of like your foundational record. If you know where your ancestors were baptized, you can figure out where they were married, where they were confirmed, because when all of those additional sacraments happen, it's required that even if you made it in a different parish than you were baptized in, that new parish has to contact the place you were baptized, and that gets added into the record, which is why you have to get a fresh certificate all the time. So just, it's easier to just talk about me personally. I was confirmed in the Diocese of Las Vegas. And so when I got confirmed, my parish in Las Vegas was supposed to contact the parish I was baptized in Pittsburgh and let them know that I got confirmed. You know, it's almost, I hate to say, because it doesn't matter, like the sacraments are important and the sacraments matter, and there's a reason there's 7 of them. You know, you could argue that baptism is the most important one, and that's why everything gets recorded in the baptismal register. So if you know where your ancestor was baptized, that's like a whole host of information that just opened up for you. Yes.
So, excuse my voice. So if someone was baptized out of the country,
Mm-hmm.
would their first sacramental parish become the baseline parish? In other words, they got baptized in Italy, they have their first communion here. Would that be a baseline parish, or would they just not have one?
That's a, yeah. Yeah. So the question was, if your ancestor was born in Italy and was baptized there, but made their first communion here in the United States, would that be the new baseline parish? The answer in my mind, and I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an expert on this, and people did all kinds of crazy things, was that it shouldn't be. Like, they should have notified the parish in Italy, not necessarily for first communion, because the terminology is sacraments that affect your canonical standing. So when you get confirmed, that affects your canonical standing. When you get married, that affects your canonical standing. If you're married, you're not free to marry anybody else. You're not free to become a priest or religious, right? So that's why you kind of you go back to the baptismal record. And even if you make a religious profession, that gets notated on your baptismal registry. That said, it's not an uncommon practice, especially like, you know, let's say they came to the United States and it was impossible to get back in contact with their parish in Italy. It wouldn't surprise me if they kind of established a new record. That does happen. It's on a case-by-case basis, though, and at least in the modern day, it's infrequent. I don't know that they would have done that back then. It won't hurt to look, but I wouldn't count on it, if that makes sense. Does anybody else have any questions before I keep going forward? I can see the number increasing in the chat. Well, I will stick around, answer questions for as long as we need to. But I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. So this is just kind of like a basic, you know, first name, last name, email address, phone number, just to give us a way to get back in contact with you. And then whether you're doing a genealogy or research request, and then we give you a blank box. Put in as much information as you want in there. Like I said, the more information you have, names, dates, relative addresses, the more likely we are to come back with a successful search for you. Yes. Oh, a friend. Great. So their website, it's actually, I think it's diopit.org/archives, but if you put that into Google, like just put in like Diocese of Pittsburgh archives into Google, something will pop up. Dennis is the archivist in Pittsburgh. He's a good guy, and they do a lot of genealogy and research. I don't necessarily know the nitty-gritty of every diocese across the country, but I do know Pittsburgh. They will do genealogy research through their sacramental records. They have all the books from all the parishes that ever existed in the Diocese of Cleveland or the Diocese of Pittsburgh for the most part. They charge $15 an hour to do research. But they have like a form because I filled it out for my relatives. If you fill out their form and mail it in with a check, they'll do research for you. DIOPIT, so DIOPITT.org. Yeah, of course. So that's my research page and my the archive inquiry form. And then digital collections. This is the thing that I'm most excited about. This didn't exist before I became the diocesan archivist, and I'm really excited that I've gotten a fair number of things online for people. They're housed in the Internet Archive, which if you go to this webpage, click on digital collections, and then you see where it says Catholic Diocese of Cleveland Archives in the center there. If you click on that picture, it'll link you to the Internet Archive. And I've got several parish histories up, not as many as I have and not as many as I would like. I do have Holy Rosary's book from 2000 up there. And I've got my intern scanning photo books every time she comes in. So hopefully more will be added soon. But I have you'll see it says I've got 24 uploads. I've got stuff from a variety of parishes. The Our Lady of Mount Carmel that you see is Our Lady of Mount Carmel Wycliffe, so not one of the Italian Our Lady of Mount Carmels. Sorry about that. But like I said, it's not pictured here, but I do have the Holy Rosary book from about 2000 up, which has a really, really detailed like parish history of Holy Rosary, which is awesome. And then, like I said, I have People of Faith. I have that uploaded. It is keyword searchable. So the key when you're searching on the Internet Archive is you want to make sure that you click on the little magnifying glass on the left-hand side of the page. If you use the search bar right here, the search bar over here, that will search the entirety of the Internet Archive, and you're going to get a bunch of hits and it's going to take forever. That's not what you want to do. You want to click on this little magnifying glass here that searches this document. So I just looked up Stanislaus, and it'll highlight, this is, the little history about one of the Saint Stanislaus parishes. And it'll highlight in the text where Stanislaus is. You can scroll on the scroll bar here and see the little blue lights, which I apologize, those are really hard to see. The little blue lights are where the name pops up in other places in the document, and you can go to that section of the document. And then just a word about the Italian parishes. So I did look through my collections. I did not get a lot of information from the Italian parishes that have closed. So that would be Our Lady of Mount Carmel East, St. Anthony's in Cleveland that closed in 1938, and then St. Marian also in Cleveland that closed in the early 20th century too, but I don't remember exactly when. And that's, I don't have a lot of information other than the sacramental records, and that's simply because a lot of the Italian parishes are still open. So I do have some records from Holy Rosary. We have them microfilmed. I have the death registers from 1892 to 1909. I have the marriage records from 1929 to 1948. I have their Book of the Elect or the Convert records from 1940 to 1973. And then I have the baptism records from 1912 to 1921. So if your ancestor falls in line for any of those, we can help you out. Just a word about dual citizenship. I'm sure all of you know this information, but I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't also share it. We get a lot of dual citizenship requests for people who want to become Italian citizens, and we're happy to help We get them from those kind of like Italian citizenship assistance companies. We get them from people who are just doing it on their own. Basically, if your ancestor was alive in Italy after March 17th of 1861, and didn't naturalize in the United States before June of 1912, and then didn't naturalize before the birth of their descendants born in the United States, you can apply for Italian citizenship, which is really exciting. So they will take baptismal records and other sacramental records because the church is so good at record keeping, and our records have proven to be true. It just has to be, it has to be signed by the ecclesial notary and then notarized by a civil notary. We have civil notaries on staff at the Diocese of Cleveland, so we can take care of both of those things for you. You just let us know that you need this, you need the certificate for dual citizenship, and we'll take care of it, no problem. Like I said, we have some Holy Rosary records. We have the sacramental records from Our Lady of Mount Carmel East, and then from St. Anthony and St. Marian. The other Italian parishes, Our Lady of Mount Carmel West, St. Rocco, Holy Redeemer, and then Holy Rosary outside of the years that I mentioned, they are in possession of their own records. It would be my preference that they helped with genealogical research. They're not required to, and I don't have the authority to tell them that they need to. So if you call a parish and they say, sorry, we can't help you, there is unfortunately nothing I can do, and I apologize for that. But, you know, if the record pertains to you, and they're not giving it to you, that's a problem. They have to give you a record that pertains to you, but to aid with genealogical research, they don't have to do. So if your record is stuck somewhere and they're not giving it to you and it's your personal record, please let me know or let someone else at the diocese know, because they have to give that to you. But you know, for your great-grandfather, they don't have to give that to you, if that makes sense. So just to kind of wrap up, things we can do, like I said, we can issue certificates. If you let us know it's for dual citizenship, we'll make sure you get both notarized signatures on there. We can issue transcripts if you happen to have gone to a closed diocesan high school. We will perform genealogical research. I didn't mention this. We are not, unfortunately, open to the public. We can't let you look through the sacramental registers yourself. Not only are they incredibly fragile, I mean, we microfilmed them a long time ago and scanned them and made them digitally available. So when we do research, we don't even open the books themselves just because they are fragile. But also because, like I was saying, you know, there's 5 entries on a page, only 1 entry pertains to your family. The others pertain to other people's families and other people's ancestors. And there's a lot of privacy implications regarded in that. A lot of times, you know, back in the day, they, you know, if a child was born out of wedlock, they didn't write down the father's information. You know, there's a lot of things that kind of like get boiled in there. So you have to go and look through the sacramental registers yourself. But like I said, if you give us all the information you have, we're happy to do that research for you. We make referrals as needed. You know, kind of like I said, I don't have everything, and I know I don't have everything, and I know I'm not always the most useful for people. And I try to keep tabs on the other dioceses throughout the country, and then the other archives in the area. So like the county archives, if I know that the county archives has something, you know, I'll send you there, or the Western Reserve Historical Society, other things like that. Other things we can't do, we can't crosswalk families across sacramental registers. So if some of your ancestors went to Holy Rosary and some went to Holy Redeemer, there's no obvious link between the two. Like we can't, you know, if we find one in Holy Rosary, we can't then go look in Holy Redeemer. You know, we have them scanned, but they're not keyword searchable. So it's just, you know, that's not something we're able to do. Or, you know, we can't, you know, find your ancestors in 1912 and then like go back and find them in 1890, not without some more information. Like I said, we can't do in-person genealogical research. Unfortunately, we get such a large volume of requests that I can't accommodate all that in-person research. We just don't have the staff availability, unfortunately. And then copies of diplomas, we can't do copies of diplomas. But my contact information is over there. Like I said, if you've contacted us before with genealogical research, you talked to my coworker, Kathy. She is amazing. I would be completely lost without her. If it exists in our archive, she will find it. You just have to give us some time. Like I said, we have a pretty large volume of genealogical responses. Kathy works on them as quickly as she can. But between, you know, all of the requests that we get, sometimes we have to order them differently. Sometimes we have someone in the building ask us for something and I have to, you know, prioritize their request first. It can take up to 2 to 3 weeks for a response. It probably will not take that long, but I just ask you to be patient with us. You know, if you reach out to us, you will receive a call back, that I promise you. And if you haven't, then please let me know, because I apologize. And I very sincerely want to make sure that we're responding to people in a prompt manner. But if you're doing genealogy, Kathy's your best bet. I know enough to do it if she's not in, but usually she's not gone for more than a day, and I just leave it for her because, like I said, you're better off with her than me. But if there's anything else, literally everything else, I'm your contact. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But I'll go ahead. I'm happy to hang out as long as people have questions and answer questions.
We'll do the chat first. If that's
Sure.
okay, then we'll see it.
Can you go back to the page with the website on it?
Yes.
Sorry about, thank you.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Deb said that Catholic Cemeteries Association has an app and you can search for your buried family members. I did not know that. That's really cool. So that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that, Deb. I have to let Kathy know. I don't even know if she knows that. Yes, a lot of baptismal records, especially the older they are written in Latin. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. So we in the archives know enough Latin to know that that's your record, but as far as other translations and things like that go, you would have to find somebody or put it into Google Translate yourself. We're not able to translate Latin. So a lot of the older records are written in Latin. And like I said, we're both kind of conversational enough in it to know that, yes, we found the right record. But as far as Latin translation, we can't help with that. Michael's question, my wife's grandmother was naturalized in 1939. Would she be eligible for dual citizenship? If her mother was born before her, so if your wife's mother was born before her grandmother naturalized, yes, she would be eligible for dual citizenship. I would double check that. I would not consider myself to be a dual citizenship expert by any stretch of any means, but I would think you could make a case for yourself. And then you would just have to prove that her mother was born, and you could do that with a baptismal record. You would have to prove that she was born before 1939. I think that's everything from the chat. Does anybody here have any other questions I can help with? Yes.
I'm interested in 2 of the 4 parishes that you have records of that are closed.
Oh, great.
So how would I find out the extent of what you have in those records, knowing that I can't come down and look at?
So the dates that we have are on, the dates that we have are going to be, if you click on this form, if you go on our website and click on this form, the dates that we have available, actually, I can pull that up. Let me see. Go back to, So, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on this. So you'll see we have name of the institution, and then the dates of the records that we have. So you said Our Lady of Mount Carmel East. Mount Carmel East, we have 1936 to 2008. And then St. Marian, we have uh 1905 to 1975. Okay, so I was wrong. St. Marian did not close in the early 20th century. But this is really the most useful form. That gives you an idea of what we have, and it's for every parish that the sacramental records got moved around. Yes,
Question.
that's okay.
I was born, I was baptized, and, you know, we went to St. Anthony's downtown.
Okay, yeah.
St. Anthony's then became St. Anthony's and St. Bridget's.
Mm-hmm.
They combined the two parishes, one Irish town.
Right.
And so I was baptized there, it becomes St. Anthony's, St. Bridget's. My record stayed with St. Anthony's, I believe, because, and then, how did that work when they broke up the parishes again? Because then there's a St. Anthony and St. Bridget's in Parma. I
Yeah.
know which way I have to get my.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously the transfer over downtown diocese.
Yeah.
What about St. Bridget's records? Were they kept separate?
So his question was, so the St. Anthony, St. Bridget merger, that happened in the early 20th century. So St. Anthony's downtown and then St. Bridget. So what they did was they kind of, moved those parishes out to the suburbs, if you will. So like you said, St. Anthony's in Parma, St. Bridget's in Parma. They did the same thing with St. Columkill too. St. Columkill was originally downtown. They closed it, they kind of renamed it in Parma. So specifically for St. Anthony, we have the records from before they became St. Anthony, St. Bridget. So 1886 to 1906. And then we absorbed the St. Anthony, St. Bridget records from 1938 to 1961. And then this is St. Bridget here on East 22nd. We have their sacramental records from 1928 to 1993.
So you could not have St. Bridget's, St. Anthony's back in 1906 and 1958. Is that what I?
No, those ones would be in Parma then.
Or between those 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah, those ones would be in Parma. Would be, I would think so. Kathy would know better than I would. But those should be, yeah, those should be in Parma. Yes.
You mentioned, orphanages. And then where did you say that if you guys don't have any, where to go after that?
Yeah, so more for those on Zoom, more clarification on where orphanage records might be. So if you know, for example, the orphanage that your ancestor was in was run by the Good Shepherd Sisters, you would want to contact the Good Shepherd Sisters. I can't promise that they have anything. I don't know what records they would have kept or not kept, but that's going to be your next best bet for detailed information. Yeah, if it's no longer in existence. The Good Shepherd Sisters, I believe,
Yeah.
at St. Vincent. Okay.
Yeah, she was great. We're not lying. Yeah, that's very quick. But there's
Yeah.
nothing for a particular, we know they were on the census for St. Vincent, but there was no
Yeah.
record. Where do I go next?
Yeah, I can look into that. It would depend on what, I don't remember off the top of my head which religious order was in charge of it, or like if it was a diocesan orphanage or not. If it was a diocesan orphanage, then the records didn't survive. But if it was a religious order orphanage, that might, that religious order might have, but yeah, perfect. Yeah, of course. We got some more in the chat. Oh, yes, I can zoom out of the merge records list, but I would also recommend, I mean, this is available online. You definitely don't have to screenshot it. You know, you could just pull it up on your computer, like I said, because it's a multiple page document. I would recommend doing that instead of screenshotting it. And then, oh, restate the dates for when people had to be naturalized. Yeah, I can look at that again. While I'm doing that, where records for St. Wenceslas and Maple Heights, I believe we have those, but let me check. Honestly, if you call me and ask where a record is, I'm pulling up this sheet. Yes, we have St. Wenceslas and Maple Heights. They're in the diocesan archives. You can feel free to reach out to us. And then those are the dates you need for the dual citizenship. To answer that question. That's an interesting question. So parishes having information on adoptions, it's hit or miss. That's one of the reasons why we can't just let people thumb through the sacramental records, because a lot of times, you know, that if the birth parents wanted a closed adoption, there's sometimes that the adoptive parents will be listed as the parents on the baptismal record, and sometimes that the birth parents will be listed on the baptismal record, and that might be something that somebody doesn't necessarily know. So, you know, again, to respect the wishes of those parents, we keep that information as private as possible. It depends. You know, Catholic Charities handled a lot of adoptions, and they have the adoption records. I have those for them, but I don't, you know, to go through, if you know that Charities was the adopting organization, you would have to go through Charities to get access to those. But like I said, a lot of times on the sacramental record, the adoptive parents would be listed and not the birth parents, but there were instances where the birth parents were listed and not the adoptive parents. So it's kind of one of those things that's hit or miss. It's not going to be, and it might not be necessarily obvious either, where it'll be like, yes, this person was adopted. Like a lot of, it was, you know, one of those things back in the day, it was hush hush. You didn't want anybody to know that you or your sibling or anybody was adopted. So they tried to kind of like smooth it as much as possible and make it not super obvious to find out. Yes.
Can you tell one of the coolest things you have on the website is the digital collections, the new books at the end that will show all the churches?
That's right. I do. Yeah, I did get those scanned. I mean, I can pull them up if you guys want.
I think they would be.
Let me see. So this is everything, as it were. Like I said, I have the Centennial book from Holy Rosary up online. It's keyword searchable. But yeah, the Diocese of Cleveland photographs. So these photo albums are particularly great. They're from the 1890s. They were created for, I believe it was Bishop Horseman. Bishop Horseman's ad limina visit. So about every 5 years or so, each bishop throughout the world has to meet with the Pope and have a one-on-one meeting. And hey, this is how everything in my diocese is going. So we always joke, we don't know if this is actually true, but that some poor seminarian had to schlep these on a boat across the ocean to go to Rome. But that's what these were created for. It's every structure that existed in the Diocese of Cleveland in 1891, 1892, 1893. So we have these scanned in online. These are not keyword searchable because they're handwritten. You can try, but I don't think it'll work. Usually computer OCR systems can't read handwriting. But so there's two of these, and you have to remember 1893, we're talking about the entirety of Northern Ohio. So we've got churches from over that are now in the Diocese of Toledo and then in Youngstown as well, in these photo albums. But yeah, I was really excited I was able to get those online. This I actually did with the help of the Cleveland Public Library because they have a flatbed scanner. So I had my cart and I went across the street to the library and spent an afternoon there scanning. It was fun.
That website is really easy to find. It's just archive.org.
Yeah, the Internet Archive is awesome. The guy who runs it, his name is I think it's Brewster Kale. And his mission in life is just to collect everything. Like he just wants to collect it all. But I went with him because he doesn't charge me any fees, and he made it really easy to it took me 5 minutes to sign up for an account, and then I could just upload whatever. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Sonia. Oh shoot, it says screen sharing is paused. Oh, I think maybe it's because I didn't share the that screen. I apologize, Zoom people. Like John was saying, it's just archive.org. And then if you go on our website and click, you can get to it as well. It's easy to look at on your computer. So my apologies for that. Does anybody else have any questions on Zoom or otherwise? Like I said, we're happy to help you at any time. I'll put my contact info, mine and Kathy's contact information up there. Please feel free to reach out. Like I said, my most important thing is making sure the records get used. So if you think I have records you can use, please let me know how I can help you use them. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Emily. That was great. Great presentation. I wanted to, oh, by the way, we visited those 4 Italian churches back in November. We did a tour of them, and that was fun. So we got to see those particular Italian churches. So we had a nice tour of that. I also wanted to mention to everyone too that Emily did this presentation free of charge. So Chow is going to make a donation on behalf of for the benefit of the Diocesan Archives on your behalf. Thanks for your presentation. Yeah, appreciate it.